Welcome into the WHAS 11 Plus studio, brought to you by Humana. I'm Isaiah Kim-Martinez, joined today by Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear for his end-of-year interview. Governor, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. Good to be in studio.
I want to start with Kentucky's economy. You talk a lot about the development projects, the investments we've seen from some big companies doubling down on Kentucky. But as you've reported, the state is facing a $300 million budget deficit this coming year. How will this affect Kentuckians' wallets?
Well, first, the economy is booming. Moody's just did a study that suggests that most states are sliding into recession, but Kentucky is still expanding. We're looking at what will likely be our third best year for economic development ever this year, which means under my administration we'll have the first, second, and third best years. That's good news for Kentuckians. But a mix of both an income tax cut passed by the General Assembly as well as increased costs from tariffs that are reducing some spending in our economy, we do have a budget deficit. Now, this isn't anything compared to, say, the Great Recession, where the deficits were significant and it caused serious pain. So we'll be able to rebalance this. But as we move into the next budget, while it will be an okay budget, it won't look like some of the last couple ones will. Now, do I believe that Kentuckians are going to directly feel it from our budget? No. But will they feel it from tariffs? Yes.
Next year is a big year for you. You've just started in your new role as chair of the Democratic Governors Association.
I only have 36 races.
There you go. For the audience, his job is to get Democrats elected or Democrats to hold office in 36 governors' races next year. And I'm actually holding right here the Wall Street Journal profile that was done on you. And in this story, you said you think you can flip both Georgia and Nevada from Republican to Democrat governors. Georgia hasn't elected a Democratic governor in 27 years. What's the top issue a candidate there needs to have to focus on to win?
I think you're going to see Democrats winning all over the country, and we're going to change the map. Just look at what happened in Miami, which hadn't had a Democratic mayor in more than, I think, 3 decades. Yet now one is going to be serving. When we're looking at what's going on in our country, it's definitely costs. Costs are hitting the American people in every single way. Folks are struggling to pay the grocery bill, the utility bill. They can't take their kids on that same vacation they went on growing up. That young couple is struggling to afford a home at the same age that their parents could buy one. You know, it's really the biggest threat that I see out there, other than the division, is the concern that the American dream is no longer attainable. That if you work hard and play by the rules, you just can't get ahead and you can't leave your kids better off. So what you're going to see Democratic governors talking about is how we're going to push back on tariffs that are making life harder, how we're going to push back on the big, ugly bill that is going to devastate, if not decimate, rural economies, how we're going to increase the supply in housing so you can afford that new home, how we're going to work to create better jobs with better wages so you can get ahead. You're going to see Democratic gubernatorial candidates that are talking about that American dream, which is about making your life just a little bit better, just a little bit easier at a time, when the Trump administration is making it a whole lot harder.
What should a Democratic candidate in Georgia for governor focus on? What is the top issue if you had to pick one?
Oh, the top issue, I believe, is reigniting and refueling that American dream, which is about making sure that if you work hard, that you can get ahead. It's about making sure that you can afford the cost of groceries, of rent, of your utilities, of your car insurance. It's all of those things right now that people feel, one thing could push them over the edge. Car repairs, and they might not be able to make it. If you're working a good job, you're putting in all that hard work, you ought to not be in that position. And I think that's what you're going to see Democrats focused on. Now, ironically, that's how I believe that President Trump got elected. He convinced the last group of undecided voters in his last election that he'd focus more on that. He said he'd bring costs down, but his policies have done anything but. He stood at that press conference with that giant tariff board that has now made everything cost more. Just think about that home, that new home that young couple wants to buy. Right now, the hardwood is more expensive because of lumber tariffs. The cabinets are more expensive because of direct cabinet tariff. The furniture is more expensive because an upholstery tariff. And everything at the grocery store is more expensive, meaning you have fewer dollars to put on that down payment. People are worse off than they were before this president took office, and you're going to see us hold all of these Republican governors accountable that haven't stood up, that haven't spoken out for their people, and their people are suffering.
You talked about the messaging, but is there a policy specifically that you think Democrats should run on in states like Georgia?
No, it's every policy that helps our families. Now,
Is there one specifically you have in mind that you think?
look at increasing the supply of housing, putting more dollars into affordable housing trust funds, decreasing some of the regulations that make it last too long, reducing the policies that directly impact that housing, the ones I talked about, lumber, upholstery, cabinetry, and that's just when you look at housing. But what we ought to be doing is listening and taking those challenges that the American people are saying, look at the grocery bill. And so how do we work to bring those prices down to give Americans just a little bit of relief? What they're crying out for is help right now. Yes, we've got to continue to build the economies of tomorrow. We've got to be able to compete with China on EVs, on chips, but we've got to make sure that we're spending the vast majority of our time helping Americans get by and get ahead.
What is the presidential timeline for you post those governor's elections next year?
Oh, right now, I'm just laser focused on 2026. When you have 36 races, you can't look ahead to anything. I've got a couple of incumbents that I know are going to have challenging races, like in Arizona, where Katie Hobbs has done a great job, but Arizona is always close. We've got legacies to protect, like Gretchen Whitmer's in Michigan and Tony Evers in Wisconsin. And then we've got states that I think we're going to be competitive, like Nevada, Georgia, and even Iowa.
Nationally, your sort of claim to fame, the big feather in your cap, is the fact that you've been a Democrat who's won in Kentucky multiple times, deep red Kentucky. Do you believe that this next iteration, this 2026, that your legacy will now fall on those incumbents you talked about protecting some of those Democrats who are in office and maybe getting a couple others elected?
Well, I hope my legacy in Kentucky is always about what I did to move our state forward. When I look at how far we've come as a state in 6 years, people are no longer looking down on us. They're looking up to us. In Kentucky, we're getting along better than we ever have. The work between local government and state government has been really seamless. We've broken every economic development record, more jobs than we've ever seen before, the highest 3-year average for wages. And when we announce the average incentivized wage for this year, I think it's going to knock people's socks off how far we've come. So I always hope that my legacy, at least in Kentucky, is bettering the lives of our people and also being there in our toughest of moments. For some reason, we have gotten hit by disaster after disaster. 3 weather-related disasters federally declared this year. Another
4-year anniversary.
Another one that I think should have been declared. The UPS plane crash. We lost over 50 people between the 3 disasters and the plane crash. And those are 50 families that are still really struggling this year. And as you mentioned, we're at the 4-year anniversary today of the tornadoes in Mayfield and Dawson Springs and Bowling Green and Bremen. But I look at those communities. I was in Mayfield yesterday, and I don't just remember the heartache. I see the resilience and the incredible rebuilding of those towns, and I'm so proud of them.
You've said a Democrat needs to be in the White House in 2028. Then over the weekend, you actually told CBS News and other outlets you believe a Democratic governor specifically needs to be elected president in 2028. What's your thought process there?
When you look at the damage that Donald Trump has done to the federal government, it's going to take an executive that has run a large organization that can bring leaders with them to rebuild it. When you look at the American people and how they want results and want them now, that's what governors do. We don't vote on the amendment to the rule to the continuing resolution. We get out there, we get dirt on our boots, we get the factories built, we get the new health clinics open, we get the new roads that save you 20 minutes each way so you can spend 40 more minutes with your family in operation. That's what the American people need, and I believe a Democratic governor is who can get it done. Now, I also believe that we're going to need a cabinet of Democratic governors and Democratic mayors because they can also bring leaders with them. But when I say rebuild the federal government, I don't think we should rebuild it the same way. It needs to be faster. It needs to be more efficient. It needs to be more responsive. And so while what Donald Trump has done has made government broken and in many instances not work, we can't get basic grants that our people need processed on time. If we get a chance to rebuild it, we've got to do it better.
It's interesting. You bring up efficiency, but not in the Doge form, I assume. You don't believe, slashing necessarily is your view. What do you mean by improving efficiency? How do you do that?
Let me give you an example. The efficiency I'm talking about is if you as a Democrat or as any elected official think that the American people have a need and you have a policy to fill that need, it can't last multiple years. So think about the Internet for All program that passed during the Biden administration. It was a belief that this is not the infrastructure of tomorrow, but right now. And to be competitive, everybody needs access to affordable Internet. Well, we are 3.5 years after that bill passed, and there is not 1 inch of fiber in the ground. There were so many regulations, so many rules. The way they set it up, we had to go ahead and get our subcontractors before we were even approved to begin the program. I'd say we had to submit 3 Encyclopedia Britannicas to people who still remember what an encyclopedia was, but before we could get approval. If we believe that everyone needs high-speed internet, we've got to have a policy, but then we've got to have an administration of that policy that gets it to them quickly.
When you mention Democratic governors in the White House, you're not necessarily referencing a coastal governor like a Gavin Newsom. You believe it can be in a different place.
Oh, we've got a lot of great governors. Gretchen Whitmer is my vice chair for the DGA. Certainly Tim Walz was just the vice presidential candidate. You have Laura Kelly from Kansas, who I just took over as chair from. Now, we've got some great governors that are on the coast, like Wes Moore and others, but the great part about the Democratic Governors Association right now is we got a lot of superstars. And when you look at 36 races, it's going to be more than just me. My job is to lead a team, is to try to make that team cohesive, and to show the country that when you elect a Democratic governor, we govern well.
The Trump administration insists it's lowering prices. The president has called the use of the word affordability, and you've talked about using words that people understand. The president has called the use of the word affordability by Democrats as a con job or a scam. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, the president's living in a different reality. It is a fact that his tariffs have made things more expensive. Tariffs are a tax on the American people, and if you don't believe me, Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul have both said so too. So if Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, and this Democratic governor all agree on something, it's probably because it's true. And the president talked about affordability in his race, but now he is not delivering. In fact, he's delivering the exact opposite, less affordability. Now is when he wants to call it a hoax. Just think about it this way. He claimed that tariffs didn't raise prices until he realized the price of certain groceries were going up. And what did he say? We're going to reduce the tariffs to reduce the prices. We used to think that a president couldn't impact the economy all that much. He's proven us wrong. But unfortunately, he's proven us wrong by devastating this American economy.
If it was your decision, what do you believe the president should be doing differently to lower prices?
First, he ought to roll back a number of these tariffs. There are some tariffs, perhaps with certain countries on things like steel. There are some tariffs to prevent China from dumping cheap EVs in the United States. And Europe does the same thing that makes sense, that are important for our national security. But there are a whole lot of these tariffs that all they do is hurt the American people. And to go back and to undo those would provide some immediate relief. The other thing that they need to do is extend the ACA tax credits. We got 100,000 Kentuckians who are about to see their health insurance increase by so much a lot of them won't be able to afford it. Congress voted to extend a tax credit for the wealthy, but it looks like they're going to vote no to extend Republican congressmen voted yes to extend a tax cut for the wealthy, but look like they're going to vote no to extend a tax credit to hardworking Americans that struggle to afford health insurance. That's having your priorities way out of whack. That extension needs to happen. And then we need to overturn that big, ugly bill, which is going to almost eliminate rural health care, and it's going to cut a lot of food assistance to people who are going to go hungry.
Real quick before I let you go, I know you don't talk about foreign affairs a lot. You haven't mentioned it's one of the 5 things that people wake up in the morning, most families thinking about. However, leaders on both sides agree Russia and Vladimir Putin are major threats to the world, to democracy. The Ukraine war is going on 4 years. How would you go about solving that and getting a resolution there?
Well, the United States should be supporting Ukraine, not undermining it. Russia is the aggressors in this, and they're not going to stop at Ukraine. If you talk to leaders throughout Europe, they are incredibly concerned, and we not only have an alliance with those European countries, but it is very clear that Vladimir Putin is who is to blame here. We need to be putting more pressure on Russia. We need to be very, very clear that we stand with Ukraine, and that's the only way that we can create the type of pressure that can get a peace that doesn't ask Ukraine to basically admit defeat.
Is there anything else you'd like to add while you're here today?
Well, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. You know, it's been a year that, yes, while it's been trying with the natural disasters and the UPS plane crash, we've also seen a lot of good. We're announcing a lot of jobs right here at the end of the year, especially in the Louisville area. I'm headed to announce some new affordable housing. So, you know, your state government, at least your executive branch, is going to keep working to try to address those everyday needs, and that's what you're going to see moving into the future.
Governor, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you all for watching here in the WHAS 11 Plus studio.
Thanks for having me in studio.